A still beating heart ripped from a living chest to feed a hungry son. Blood, obsidian, apocalyptic sacrifice. Was this the work of a bloodthirsty cult or a sophisticated empire fighting to keep the world from ending? Welcome to the brutal and brilliant world of the Aztecs. Long before the skyscrapers of Mexico City, there stood a magnificent island capital built in the middle of a lake, a place of floating gardens, mind-bending astronomy, and an army of warriors who fought like gods. But this glory was built on a foundation of bone. From their nomadic roots to the rise of their legendary kings, the Aztecs created a civilization that both terrified and mystified the world. They believed they were living under the fifth sun, and that only blood could prevent the final darkness. But when the Spanish arrived, two worlds collided in a storm of gold and steel. Was the history we know written by the victors, or was the truth even more gruesome? Today, we peel back the layers of myth to reveal the true chronicle of power, ritual, and the tragic fall of the Empire of Gold. You think you know the Aztecs? Think again. Let's dive into history.
Stories of human sacrifice to the gods, forbidden acts, marriages between brothers and sisters, and relentless warfare. These are the things people remember first when they hear the name of the Aztecs. Because of this violence and warlike behavior, many historical researchers feel hesitant to refer to them directly as a civilization. However, their ultimate downfall came at the hands of even more gruesome Spanish colonial soldiers. In 1519, Spanish looters first found traces of a prosperous city in central Mexico. From this city, which was part of the advanced Aztec Empire, they attempted to plunder wealth. Initially, they faced resistance from the local indigenous people. Long before the legends and folklore of the Mexico region, the name of the Aztec nation was heard. They first established settlements in the Aztlan region. This place was somewhere in the north or northwest of Mexico. In the early stages of their civilization's development, the Aztecs were nomadic and their population was not very large. While the Mayan civilization was fully developing in the Yucatan region near Guatemala, another prosperous civilization emerged centered around the city of Teotihuacan in central Mexico. On the other hand, around 900 A.D., the Toltec civilization developed in central Mexico. The Aztec civilization was the last to emerge on the soil of Mexico. Around 900 A.D., the Pala dynasty was ruling in Bengal. Two weak Pala kings, Narayan Pala and Rajapala, were struggling to maintain their rule. At that very same time, the Toltec people were developing a new civilization in central Mexico. They built large cities there. Their capital was the city of Tolan, known today as Tula. The Toltecs built massive buildings, temples, and pyramids. They mastered writing techniques following the Mayans and could even create calendars. As trade and commerce expanded in the Toltec kingdom, they had the opportunity to build a prosperous city. Around 1000 A.D., the Toltec civilization was destroyed by the invasion of several tribes speaking the Nahuatl language. Among them, the Culhua tribe was extremely violent. During this time, Culhuacan developed as their main city. This city was located on the south shore of Lake Texcoco. At that time, another prosperous city named Texcoco was built on the eastern shore of the lake. They also spoke Nahuatl. Historians believe that people of the Nahuatl-speaking Culhua tribe built the Aztec civilization in central Mexico. Shortly after 1200 A.D., when Bakhtiar Khalji set out to conquer Nadia, another Nahuatl-speaking group called the Tenochca came and settled in the Latin region. They also lived on an island in the middle of Lake Texcoco. In 1325, they founded a city named Tenochtitlan. Gradually, they gathered strength and ensured their dominance over the entire Mexico region. Essentially, these Tenochca are introduced as the Aztecs. Their capital was Tenochtitlan. Modern-day Mexico City is built right over its ruins. During the colonial expansion period, around 1519, the Spanish attacked Mexico.
They noticed the absolute dominance of the Tenochca over the entire Mexico region. They primarily faced the greatest resistance from these Tenochca kings. In the history written by them, the Tenochca kings became known as Aztecs. Even today, Aztec refers to the Tenochca kings. However, many kings from other dynasties are also included in this. Starting from Acamapichtli, about 11 kings ruled there.
Where were these Tenochtitlan before Mexico City? If they were the architects of the Aztec civilization, where was their original home? There is much speculation about this. Extensive research has been done on the original birthplace of the Tenochtitlan. Based on that, some claim they came from Aztlan in western Mexico. However, initially, they were nomadic. It is thought that around 1168 AD, the Tenochtitlan left their ancestral home and traveled eastward in search of a new homeland. On their path of continuous movement, they would pause in a specific area for 1 or 2 years. Through this nomadic life, the Tenochtitlan eventually arrived at the shores of Lake Texcoco in central Mexico. Modern-day Mexico City is located right there. When the Tenochtitlan arrived in this area, the Tepanecs dominated the entire Mexico region. Initially, they were able to enter this part of Mexico only with the permission of the Tepanecs. After a short while, the position of the Tenochtitlan changed. Although they were immigrants, they began to irritate the local inhabitants. They attacked various indigenous groups and plundered their wealth. Annoyed by their various disturbances, indigenous groups like the Tepanecs and Culhuas tried to subdue them. When everyone collectively attacked the Tenochtitlan, they were defeated. A large portion of the Tenochtitlan was forced to remain as enslaved prisoners under the Culhuas. On the other hand, many of them fled. They began living on an island in the middle of Lake Texcoco. Within a short time, the Culhuas engaged in battle with other local tribes. At that time, many Tenochtitlan slaves got the chance to fight on behalf of the Culhuas. By showing bravery in these wars, they pleased the Culhua leader Coxcox. During this time, the Tenochtitlan leader applied to marry King Coxcox's daughter. Although King Coxcox accepted their request, a different thought was playing in the minds of the Tenochtitlan. They had pre-planned a horrific act. When Coxcox agreed to the marriage proposal with their leader, the Tenochtitlan brought the king's daughter. Then they dragged the girl away and sacrificed her to the gods. Later, they flayed the skin from the body of the dead princess and dressed a priest in it. Through this sacrifice, they essentially transformed the princess into a goddess. King Coxcox himself had come to this religious festival, but by the time he learned everything, nothing was left of the disaster. Coxcox burst into a rage. To take revenge, he ordered to kill all Tenochtitlan present there. However, before the king's order could be executed, most Tenochtitlan fled and joined their previous group. Together, they founded a city in the middle of the lake. Like the Culhuas, they developed their city based on monarchical ideas. Through the construction of large buildings and temples, they built the traditional infrastructure of Tenochtitlan. Additionally, like the Culhuas, they developed a powerful monarchy there. The city founded by the Tenochtitlan in the middle of Lake Texcoco, named Tenochtitlan, became very powerful around 1325. At that time, another city named Tlatelolco developed on the other side of the lake. They had lived on that island since before 1200. After sacrificing the Culhua princess and escaping from Coxcox's army, the Tenochtitlan had arrived. But in their time of prosperity, they wanted a person of royal lineage to come and be their king. For this, they again sought help from the Culhuas. They sent a king named Acamapichtli. This king ruled Tenochtitlan as their monarch until 1376. The Tenochtitlan were still friends with the Tepanecs and also paying them taxes. After the death of King Acamapichtli, Huitzilihuituf sat on the throne as their king. After him, Huitzilihuituf's half-brother, Chimalpopoca, became king. Chimalpopoca ruled from 1414 to 1428. By then, the Tepanecs had conquered many regions under them, including Culhuacan and Texcoco. Then, the Tepanec king Tezozoma conquered Texcoco in 1418. Tezozomoc died in 1427. Afterward, his son, Moxtla, became the Tepanec king and continued the conquests. As the new Tepanec king, Moxtla killed the Aztec king Chimalpopoca and occupied Tenochtitlan. Additionally, Moxtla conquered the Tlatelolco region. However, after being subjugated for a long time, the inhabitants of Tenochtitlan were eager for freedom. Their struggle for liberation was fueled by the people of Tlacocan, Tacuba, located on the western shore of the lake. They were also eager for independence after being subjugated for a long time. On the other hand, the defeated tribes of other states in the Texcoco region were now desperate for liberation. Meanwhile, the king of Texcoco state was Nezahualcóyotl. Even after being the legitimate king, he took shelter in a distant mountain cave for self-defense against the Tepanecs. Taking advantage of the situation, he came down from the mountains to the human settlement and joined the new Tenochtitlan king Itzcoatl. Through this, the combined forces of Tlacopan, Texcoco, and the Tenochtitlan united and started an expedition against the Tepanecs. Faced with the attack of the combined power, the Tepanecs could not survive. With the defeat of the Tepanecs, the Aztecs became very powerful in the Lake Texcoco region. Then, under the leadership of their king, Itzcoatl, they ensured control over a vast area along the shores of the lake. From then on, they were referred to only as Aztecs. However, it is certain that the Aztec civilization reached its peak through Itzcoatl. He was in power from 1428 to 1440. Itzcoatl reformed the administrative system by organizing government officials at various levels. He established a priesthood in the religious sphere and expanded the city of Tenochtitlan. He connected the island state with the mainland by building large causeways. Gradually, he was able to bring almost every independent tribe in the Valley of Mexico under the Aztecs. After his death, Moctezuma I became the Aztec king in 1440. While the Aztecs were busy building their state, the second phase of the Ilyas Shahi rule in the independent Sultanate period had begun in Bengal. Nasir-ad-Din Mahmud Shah I sat on the throne of Bengal. After the fall of King Ganesh's dynasty, the new sultans were trying to make suitable administrative reforms in Bengal. On the other hand, the Aztecs were busy improving the cultural and structural standards of their city Tenochtitlan. To provide pure water, attempts were made to dig a canal from the springs of Chapultepec to the city. Simultaneously, an aqueduct was being constructed. Floods became a major problem for the Aztecs. Many initiatives were taken to protect the island city of Tenochtitlan from floods. At the time, a large dam was built on the eastern border of the city. The main reason was so that even during the monsoon, lake water would not overflow and enter their capital city. In contrast to Tenochtitlan, the Puebla region developed with a different religious ideology. At one point, the Aztecs also conquered Puebla. Then, many temples in the names of new gods and goddesses were built in the Aztec state. Montezuma introduced various gruesome customs prevalent in the Mexico region in a new form, which gave birth to much individual and state-level bloodlust and even called into question the achievements of the Aztec civilization. Even before this, the Aztecs offered human sacrifices to the gods. Usually, war prisoners were sacrificed to the gods. When there was no war, Montezuma started the Flower Wars. Through the introduction of this ritual, a battle would take place between two groups of warriors solely for the purpose of collecting war prisoners. Then, the prisoners were caught and sacrificed to the gods.
Later, in 1469, Montezuma I died. Then his son, Axayacatl, was recognized as king. During his time, Aztec dominance expanded further to the west and south. In one stage of continuous warfare, the Aztecs killed the king of Tlatelolco. After establishing dominance over this city, it turned into an important commercial center within all of Mexico. During Axayacatl's reign, the ultimate development of the Aztecs' religion-based art was observed. The stone calendar, which is the signature artwork of the Aztecs, was constructed during Axayacatl's time. This circular stone slab weighed more than 20 tons. On this stone slab, with a diameter of 13 feet, the calculations of days, months, and years were engraved. Additionally, many calculations of astronomy and calendars were found here. In 1472, the king of Texcoco died. Besides liberating the state of Texcoco from Tepanec dominance, he increased the scope of his kingdom along with the Aztecs and became one of the most important rulers of Latin America at that time. However, even before him, the Texcoco state was able to establish dominance in the south of Mexico. On the other hand, after gaining freedom from the Tepanec dominance, the Texcoco state began collecting taxes from these states anew. Nezahualcóyotl was one of the greatest builders of those days. Besides building many buildings, temples, and infrastructures, he also encouraged the practice of art. He showed deep interest in the development of religion-based religious art. Personally, he was also a poet. He practiced astronomy and astrology as well. He also had a role in introducing a public welfare-oriented administrative system in the Texcoco state. He was able to maintain a peaceful relationship with Tenochtitlan for a long time. Through this, his wisdom as a king is revealed. Nezahualcóyotl died after placing the Texcoco state on a seat of honor. Then his son, Nezahualpilli, took charge of Texcoco and the Aztecs and ruled until 1515. Nezahualpilli had married a sister of Moctezuma I. Without any reason, he killed the queen in 1498. Through the killing of this queen, the conflict between the Aztecs and Nezahualpilli reached its peak. However, his luck was good. Around this time, in 1479, the Aztec Emperor Axayacatl died. After Axayacatl's death, his brother Tizoc became the Aztec Emperor. After becoming emperor, he ordered the construction of 2 temples for the god of war and the god of rain. Additionally, he created a massive stone vessel. The hearts of people sacrificed to the gods were brought and burned in this vessel. During his time, instead of various warlike behaviors, the Aztecs spent their time in worship and religious rituals. However, during his time, the ritual of sacrifice took the form of a complete pandemic. The Aztecs continued to sacrifice war prisoners brought from various places, rebels of their own state, and even the children or wives of opponents. Besides creating various havoc, Tizoc died in 1486, leaving the empire in a state of complete disorder. Afterward, his elder brother, Ahuisolotl, became the Aztec king. He was a greater maniac than Tizoc. Emperor Ahuisolotl took the initiative to complete the construction of the war god temple. Then a need for a large number of human sacrifices for that temple arose. Solely for the purpose of human sacrifice, Ahuisolotl led his army on an expedition to the northern region for about 2 years. Through this expedition, the Aztecs brought in more than 20,000 people. To please the war god, terror must be created in everyone's mind. Keeping this belief in front, the 20,000 prisoners were subjected to hellish torture and marched in 2 rows. At this time, the Aztec soldiers beat them severely. Their palms were pierced and tied with strong vines.
Then the Texcoco leader Nezahualpilli was also invited for the sacrifice. Forgetting previous crimes and conflicts, Ahuitzotl and Nezahualpilli together took stone knives in their hands. One by one, they ripped open the chests of many prisoners, took out their hearts, and dedicated them to the gods. Along with the king and members of the royal family, many priests and ordinary warriors also got the chance to offer sacrifices this time. Human sacrifice had been an inseparable part of the Aztec religion from before, but such a massacre of 20,000 people at once had not happened before. A few days after this heart-wrenching massacre occurred, in 1503, Ahuitzotl met with an accident while observing the construction of a dam. After his death there, his brother Axayacatl's son, Moctezuma II, became the Aztec emperor. Moctezuma II was not very different from his father and uncles. He had killed his sister, the king of Texcoco. Consequently, the spirit of revenge and a bloodlust for killing possessed his mind. Like Axayacatl, Tizoc, or Ahuitzotl, Moctezuma also brought in 12,000 people as prisoners from one of his rebel states. Then, without any trial, they were caught and sacrificed to the gods. On the other hand, Moctezuma destroyed the Texcoco army to avenge his sister's death. Many people were caught from there too and sacrificed indiscriminately. Montezuma's task became easier when the king of Texcoco, Nezahualpilli, died in 1516. Ignoring their rules and regulations, Montezuma personally intervened and selected a king of his choice in that state. Enraged by this, the people of Texcoco rebelled. Montezuma suppressed this rebellion with a heavy hand. Consequently, their long-standing friendship with Texcoco was ruined. That powerful war alliance broke. At such a time, the Spanish appeared as a curse upon a curse. The eyes of the bloodthirsty Spanish general Cortés fell upon the prosperous areas of the Aztecs. In 1519, his army carried out attacks and began burning one Aztec village after another. When the attempt to build resistance against him failed, Montezuma was killed at one stage. While the war was ongoing, Cuitlahuac became their king, but died quickly after being infected with smallpox. Then, even though Cuauhtémoc became their king, he could not achieve much. In 1524, the Spanish killed him while he was a prisoner. In this way, the Aztecs were destroyed by the Spanish invasion. Researcher Michael Smith published the second edition of his famous book, The Aztecs, through Blackwell Publishing in 2005. It is seen there that in the extraordinarily beautiful region surrounded by the mountains of central Mexico, beyond the bloodlust of Aztec settlements and human sacrifice, there were many important cultural achievements. On the other hand, to reduce the horror of the gruesome massacre the Spanish carried out by occupying this area, and to hide their own guilt, they might have added many things to Aztec history that were not actually part of Aztec culture. In Aztec culture, there were 4 more worlds before the current one, and the story that each had a separate sun has more stories behind it. Dear viewers, the Aztecs believed that all 4 previous worlds were destroyed due to disorder. According to them, the first sun was the god Tezcatlipoca, who got involved in a war with his brother, the god Quetzalcoatl. Then, after being defeated in the fight with Quetzalcoatl, he had to move away from the sky. Then, to remove the darkness that occurred on Earth in the absence of the sun and the sky, Quetzalcoatl himself appeared as the second sun. At that, Tezcatlipoca reportedly got angry and turned all the Aztecs into monkeys. Then, being forced, Quetzalcoatl washed away all the monkeys and himself moved away from his position as a god.
Mary Miller and Carl Taub, in their 1993 book published by Thames and Hudson in London, titled The Gods and Symbols of Ancient Mexico and the Maya, an illustrated dictionary of Mesoamerican religion, showed how through various events, the god Tlaloc and his wife Chalchi-Huitliqui came as the third and fourth sons. However, both of them also had trouble with the first son, Tezcatlipoca. According to Aztec belief, after this came the fifth son, which has remained until now. Dear viewers, do you remember the famous book Montezuma's Daughter, written by H. Rider Haggard? Qazi Anwar Hussain, the famous translator and writer of Shiba Prakashani, translated it as Montezuma's May. There, you will see him using various names like this sun god in his own way. There is nothing to be confused about here. It is worth mentioning that he called Tezcatlipoca as Tisco, Quetzalcoatl as Quetzal, Xochiquetzal as Jesse, Huitzilopochtli as Huitzal, and Chalchi-Huitliqui as Chalik. Although there was an attempt not to complicate the subject for the reader, we can certainly correct it while writing history. According to legend, it can be assumed that the Aztecs believed that to keep the sun god calm, sacrifices had to be offered to him, and if they could not do that, the sun would no longer rise from the east. The angry sun would destroy all life on Earth with a curse as before. War prisoners defeated in various wars for ages became the victims of their horrific belief. Day after day, they continued to offer human sacrifices, but they never tried to check if the sun rose in the east if a sacrifice was not offered one day. It is estimated that until 1487, 20,000 to 80,000 people were sacrificed at the famous pyramid of Tenochtitlan. To please their gods, the Aztecs used to dedicate their various wealth, gold nuggets, and food to the gods. However, in their belief, the sun god's favorite was the human heart that continued to beat. By offering sacrifices continuously, their priests' hands had become so skilled that a trained priest, if he wanted, could rip open a person's chest with one stroke of a knife and bring out their beating heart. Then he would hold up that beating heart toward the sun. After that, the lifeless body from which the heart was removed would be thrown down from the top of the pyramid. Below, waiting ordinary people would pick up that dead body and eat it piece by piece. After writing these descriptions about the Aztecs, many say in the very next line that the arrival of the Spaniards brought an end to Aztec barbarism. That too is a blatant lie, because the Spaniards started more barbarism in a new way. If you have seen the famous director Mel Gibson's movie Apocalypto, you will understand what Aztec sacrifice was like. Initially, it was claimed that more than half of the Aztec temple construction was done with human skulls, but many historians reject this logic. According to them, besides killing the Aztec Emperor Moctezuma II, the Spanish fabricated this story to justify the destruction of their civilization. Recent ongoing archaeological excavations prove something different. In 2015 and 2018, extensive archaeological excavations were carried out in the Templo Mayor area of Mexico City. Through this, countless human skulls were found there. On the other hand, José Fernando Ramírez from the Library of Madrid discovered the Durán Codex by the famous writer Diego Durán. Those of you who have seen our video on the Codex Gigas do not confuse it with this. Anyway, Diego Durán gave detailed descriptions in about 78 chapters on various subjects from the time of Spanish occupation. There, he gave descriptions of various Aztec kings. Additionally, he claimed that 80,400 women, men, and helpless children were sacrificed during the inauguration of an Aztec temple. He wrote about discovering this information by analyzing the temple's murals and various engraved designs. Even now, searching online, you can see pictures of countless human skulls discovered at Templo Mayor, even on Wikipedia. On June 28, 2018, in the famous Science magazine, Lizzie Wade wrote an article titled, "Feeding the Gods. Hundreds of Skulls Reveal Massive Scale of Human Sacrifice in Aztec Capital." There, under the tagline, archaeologists uncover the remains of a giant rack of skulls beneath downtown Mexico City, she highlighted various pictures of Aztec barbarism. According to Lizzie Wade, human sacrifice occupied a particularly important place in Mesoamerica. Many of the region's cultures, including the Maya and the Mexica, believed that human sacrifice nourished the gods. Without it, the sun would cease to rise and the world would end. And sacrificial victims earned a special, honored place in the afterlife. That is, to them, this human sacrifice was a matter of spirituality. In the article titled "Unearthing Democracy's Roots" in the same Science magazine, she provided a unique analysis of Tenochtitlan. There, too, the distinct identity of Aztec ritual emerged. On July 11, 2023, in the Popular History magazine, in an article titled "Human Sacrifice: Why the Aztecs Practiced This Gory Ritual," Dave Roos showed that behind the expansion of the Aztec Empire until the 15th–16th centuries, there was a role for this gruesome human sacrifice. They used to frighten the people through sacrifice. Then, out of fear of being sacrificed, people did not dare to say anything against the Aztec Empire. DNA testing of the skulls found in recent excavations shows that most of the unfortunate sacrificial victims came from outside. Many speculate that among the war prisoners or slaves, mostly war prisoners, were sacrificed so that fear would spread and no one would go to war against the empire. However, some of them, considering it a proud act, would voluntarily become sacrificial victims through self-immolation in the hope of finding a place in the sun god's military camp in the next life. In the New York Post, James Rogers wrote an article titled "Skulls Reveal Human Sacrifice Secrets of Lost Aztec City." According to him, the area was once the epicenter of the Aztec city of Tenochtitlan, a gruesome site where human sacrifices were performed to honor the gods.
Captives were taken to the city's Templo Mayor, or Great Temple, where priests removed their still beating hearts. The bodies were then decapitated, and priests removed the skin and muscle from the corpses' heads. Then, large holes were carved into the sides of the skulls and placed on a large wooden pole before being placed in the tsampantli, a huge rack of skulls in front of the temple. That is, in short, the Templo Mayor area was the center of Tenochtitlan's sacrifice. There, after catching the prisoners, sacrificing them, and removing their beating hearts, their bodies were thrown from the top of the temple. Some of the priests would flay the skin and muscle from the head and hang the skull inside a pole. Then they would keep the dried skulls, which had been discovered from various racks. Outside of religious rituals, the Aztec economy survived centered around agriculture. Their main crop was corn. Besides this, they used to cultivate many other food crops. Apart from corn, they cultivated various vegetables and crops. Among these, the mention of crops like tomato, capsicum, squash, pea, cocoa, chili, tobacco, and cotton can be made. On the other hand, they also cultivated maguey extensively, from the juice of which they made alcohol. They made thread and cloth from the bark of the maguey tree, and made roofs for houses from leaves and needles from tree thorns. They used to smoke tobacco by burning it in a hollow reed like a cigarette, so they also started tobacco cultivation.
On the other hand, they introduced a game by making rubber balls from the sap of rubber trees. Not knowing the use of the plow, cultivating the land by digging with a hoe or spade was their only way. Even though they mastered the technique of water irrigation, they were unskilled in animal husbandry or utilizing animal power. Among their pet animals were various types of dogs, turkeys, and ducks. Evidence of the use of wooden spades and grinding stones as Aztec tools and equipment has been found. What the people of Bangladesh know as shil pata, the Aztecs called metate and mano. However, for cutting skin, meat, and other things, the Aztecs had mastered the use of stone tools. They made needles, axes, and ornaments with copper obtained from various mountain veins. They made ornaments or bells by the cire perdu or lost wax method. On the other hand, with the glass-like stone obsidian found in volcanic lava, they made sharp weapons. Most of the sacrificial knives were made with this obsidian. Not knowing the use of the spinning wheel, the Aztecs wove cloth by making thread with sticks. They also learned to make earthen vessels for cooking and storing crop foods. They were also accustomed to the use of weapons like bows and arrows, spears, javelins, and maces or clubs. In many areas, they had even built artificial islands by building dams in the middle of the lake and throwing soil inside for cultivation purposes. Their chinampas, or floating gardens, brought much development to the agricultural sector. Due to the absence of currency or money in Aztec society, their trade and commerce were conducted through barter. When a full currency system had developed in medieval Bengal, even then the Aztecs had not mastered what a currency system was, according to experts. They used some things as alternatives to currency. Among these, cocoa beans, gold dust, various types of bird feathers, and thin knives made of copper can be mentioned. In the case of exchange, jade stones were most valuable to the Aztecs. At that time, they did not consider gold pieces so valuable. Gold had value to them only as an ornament. Apart from this, silver also had a high price. Since they could not make silver by melting silver ore, they collected it from silver or gold veins inside the mountains. That is why they considered jade stones more valuable. Greedy for gold, the Spanish crossed the Atlantic Ocean and went to their country. After being defeated, when asked to bring valuable objects, the Aztecs annoyed the Spanish by bringing jade stones instead of gold. The Aztec civilization, dependent on war and religion, survived primarily by relying on various mythological stories. Like all other ancient cultures, they were believers in pagan religion. In their belief, the god Huitzilopochtli is seen as a guide. On the other hand, the Aztecs believed that Huitzilopochtli sat on a cactus and sent an eagle. Through this, it could be correctly determined in which place their new home should be built. Their two main gods, Huitzilopochtli and Tlaloc's temple, were at the heart of Tenochtitlan, on top of the Templo Mayor pyramid. Among their other gods, Ometeotl, god of creation,
Tezcatlipoca, supreme god of Tenochtitlan, Xipe-Totec, god of spring and agriculture, Mictlantecutli, god of death, Xiuhtecutli, god of fire and time, Quetzalcoatl, serpent god, and Coatlicue, earth mother goddess. To worship these gods, the Aztecs organized various festivals. There, from sacrifice to collective feasts, music, dance, idol decoration, burning incense, dedicating valuable things, and blood donation from one's own body were performed. However, in most Aztec art, the god who is shown as a snake covered in feathers is Quetzalcoatl. For the need of agriculture and religious rituals,
The Aztecs started practicing astronomy. They formulated a special calendar where a month was calculated as 20 days. According to them, a year ended in 18 such months. With 5 unlucky days added at the end of their year, the Aztec solar year was also 365 days, just like ours. On the other hand, in their stone calendar, the year was 260 days. They completed 260 days by calculating 20 weeks with 13 days in a week. The Aztecs used to keep track of their days and dates on a round stone disk to calculate this calendar, which was used only in religious rituals. The pictographic script they used to write has similarities with ancient Egypt and Babylon. However, since the Aztecs' writing method was not very advanced, written forms are not found in their literature. In the base 20 number writing method, they wrote from 1 to 19 by arranging dots consecutively. Then, for 20, they drew a picture of a flag. After flag upon flag, they drew a picture of a fir tree to represent 400, 20 times 20. It meant many hairs. This was useful for them in measuring height and length in architectural construction. They drew a picture of a bag to denote 8,000. In their art and architectural construction, there was an influence of this counting method. The Aztecs did not limit their artistic identity to only number counting in stone calendars. They also showed excellence in architecture and sculpture. Besides weakness in drawing, evidence of their proficiency in dance over music is found. Stone statues found on the walls of temples alongside various pyramids introduce the excellence of Aztec sculpture. On the other hand, they also built large stone statues of gods and goddesses. Additionally, beautiful hats and crowns made of feathers showed their taste. They made beautiful, colorful clothes by attaching feathers to woolen cloth. Besides this, beautifully designed earthen vessels and unskilled handmade wood carvings are another identity of their artistic soul. Today was our second arrangement in introducing you to the civilizations of America. Before this, you learned about the Mayan civilization. If you haven't seen our video on the history of the Mayan civilization, the link to that video is in the description of this video. Someday, perhaps the Inca civilization will also be discussed. Stay well, stay healthy, and if today's video seemed good and informative, you can give others the chance to watch by sharing. Thank you.